For the people that are saying, I have a big account, but I don't have, a whole Saturday to give back and go clean up trash. Well, then why aren't you reaching out to these large nonprofits that do great work, like the National Forest Organization or, those types of organizations, and offering to do a collaborative post with them for free? Because I think that would be a great way to give back too.
Well, hey everyone. Welcome to episode 426 of F-Stop, Collaborate, and Listen. I'm your host, Matt Payne, and today's conversation is a powerful exploration of photography, public lands, and conservation ethics with Arizona-based photographer and advocate, Ashley Petfish. Ashley brings a unique perspective to the table, not only as a photographer, but also as someone with a background in law and sociology. Growing up in Camp Verde and now living in Sedona, Arizona, she's deeply rooted in the landscapes of the Southwest and equally passionate about protecting them. In this episode, we talk about everything from the commodification of public lands and the impact of social media on outdoor spaces, to the nuances of geotagging, indigenous land respect, and how photographers can become better stewards of the places they love to photograph. Ashley also shares her work with organizations like the Oak Creek Watershed Council and the Arizona Site Steward Foundation, offering real, actionable ways that photographers can start giving back. Before we dive in, I want to remind you that this podcast is made possible by listeners like you through Patreon. If you find value in these conversations and want to help keep them going, consider joining our community at patreon.com/fstopandlisten. Your support means the world to me. All right, let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Ashley Petfish. All right, Ashley Petfish, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, I think I first learned about you on Threads, which, love it or hate it, I think it's one of the more interesting social media platforms right now. And what I like about it is that it's introduced me to a lot of new people, and you actually just get to have conversations with people instead of commenting on people's photography or whatever. So I think it's a very interesting platform.
Yeah, I really liked it. It's been crazy on Threads, just seeing like how the algorithm is a bit different and can get you to or even seen other people's pages that I don't think I would have ever seen on Instagram, just based upon how that algorithm works. So I've actually found a lot of people that I think a lot more similarly to on Threads. I care about the same causes versus Instagram. I was having kind of an issue finding those people. So it's just crazy. I would say like how much it's been easy to build community on there, that I think it harkens me back to like 2015, 2016 Instagram before I got inundated with ads. So
Right. Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, like I said, welcome to the show. And I think I'd love to just kick this off and let's start with your journey. How did you get into photography and what led you to focus on conservation and public lands?
yeah, so I have liked taking pictures of the outdoors and nature pretty much my whole life. Growing up right outside of Sedona, Arizona, there was no shortage of pretty places to take a photo of. I just obviously have gotten better at it as I have continued on my journey. But I just really just started taking photos at kind of a young age, and it just has been a hobby that's stuck with me. And the conservation piece, similarly, growing up where I grew up and, being able to see all of this nature just right outside my backyard, it just really instilled in me from a young age the importance of conserving these places. I grew up right along the Verde River, which is one of Arizona's wild and scenic rivers, one of our last wild and scenic areas in the state. And so, when you grow up with that as your backyard, I think it just becomes second nature to really focus on what the conservation piece of these places are.
Yeah, that resonates a lot with me. I grew up in Colorado Springs, and pretty much every weekend, every summer, my parents and I would go up into the mountains, go camping, shoot 22 pistols and like use a bow and arrow and shoot at targets and go hiking and climb mountains and stuff like that. So it was a huge part of my life growing up. And I can remember going to campsites growing up, and they would be full of trash and, there's stuff everywhere. And my parents just instilled in me in an early age, like, it's important that we keep these places sacred so that when we come back, we can enjoy them the way we like to enjoy them. And it's unfortunate that not everyone has that same mindset.
It is. And I think, too, for people like us that maybe we're going places year after year after year, you understand the importance of, like, this isn't a place I'm just going once. I want to go here. Some of my favorite hikes are hikes that I've been doing since I was in high school. So
Right?
it's like I've been doing this hike for 20 years. Of course, I don't want to see it trashed with graffiti and stuff because I plan to come back here for the next 20 years, 30 years, 40 years too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this might seem like a really ridiculous question, but why should photographers care about these issues at all?
I mean, so if they look at it from a purely selfish standpoint, without nature, you're not going to have, like, if you're a landscape photographer, you're not going to have pristine landscapes. And someone could argue and say, well, I'll just Photoshop out the trash. Okay, well, you're still not getting, the pristine view that I think, really captures, like, what it looked like in real time. So if you look at it from, the selfish perspective, and even if they're not a landscape photographer, every time I go somewhere pretty, I see wedding photographers. I see, the elopement photographers. I see people getting their family photos taken near Bell Rock all the time. And if Bell Rock is trashed and there's spray paint and there's graffiti everywhere, that's not going to be fun to edit that out from behind people either. So I think if someone looks at it from a purely selfish perspective, it's your backdrop. And from a larger societal perspective, these places instill people a love of the outdoors. They help people with mental health issues. Getting outside has been shown to be great for benefits for mental health. And they're wildlife areas. Wildlife can eat trash. Wildlife can get impacted by noise pollution. Wildlife can get impacted by light pollution. So keeping these places clean, pristine, and really wild is really the best, interest of all of us as humans living on this planet.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you brought up something I was going to mention, which is all of the positive impacts of spending time outside and what that can do for us psychologically, physiologically. It's just an amazing way to stay healthy, and it's a core part of what keeps me healthy as well. So I think that's a huge one for sure.
A few years ago, I think I got a lot of my following from posting videos about cleaning up graffiti and trash and talking about people that were marking on rocks in Sedona. And some of the comments would be like, well, I went and visited Bell Rock 2 days ago and I didn't see any graffiti. Yeah, because I was there the night before spending 3 hours cleaning it up. Like, you didn't see it because someone like me was there the day before cleaning it up. That is the proof. Like, without park rangers and people working in national forests and on public lands and staff for those, you are going to see the trash. You're going to see the bathrooms that are closed or disgusting. You are going to see the graffiti because the people who clean it up aren't going to be there. And so I think a lot of people, like, they'll just say, well, it looked nice when I was there. And I'm like, because they were staffed properly with rangers and people to pick up that trash. So I do think there's a cognitive dissonance, but I also think it's just a lot of people coming from a place of their own subjective personal experience of a very small glimpse in time. Whereas, oh, well, when I visited the Grand Canyon, I didn't see any rangers. So clearly we didn't need any rangers there. They don't see the background stuff. They don't see the rangers that might have been, down Bright Angel Trail helping someone. They didn't see the ones that were stocking the bathrooms. They didn't see the ones at the visitor center. And so people have a tendency to take their own subjective snapshot in time personal experiences and then try to extrapolate it to an entire agency or an entire sort of mechanism in motion rather than looking at the objective picture, which I think is just a problem we have in general around the country.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like I said, I don't want to make it too political, but let's talk about your upbringing. So like you said, you grew up in the Sedona area in Arizona. How did that influence your perspective on land stewardship?
Yeah, so I think I had a really awesome opportunity to grow up in small town Arizona because in Camp Verde, Arizona, where I grew up, you have Montezuma's Castle National Monument right there. So, I mean, it was literally minutes away from my house, from my high school. We had Tuesday National Monument in Cottonwood, right? We had Red Rock State Park to go to, Slide Rock State Park, Tonto National Bridge. We had the national monuments in Flagstaff, Wupatki. We had historical centers, So all of my field trips growing up were to public lands or to, sacred archaeological sites that have been preserved for education. And so any sort of, people are reading in a history book about maybe native cultures or, what happened during, time that Arizona became, from a territory to state. I'm actually going to these places and seeing them. People might hear about, the rocks in the Grand Canyon. I'm going on a field trip to actually see it. And so when you grow up in close proximity to all these beautiful places where you can actually take things out of the classroom and then learn them in real time in the natural environment, I think it just inherently gives you an opportunity to really grow up learning and understanding that stewardship from a very young age, and then couple that with your education.
Yeah, and I think, we both have that lived experience of growing up in these great places and then seeing how they can be impacted over a long period of time. And I think having that perspective of being able to see something the way it used to be versus the way it is now, and the different things that have impacted that journey of that place, going from this amazingly pristine spot that we love to this place that's inundated with people and trash and feces and all of these other impacts of high visitation of people who maybe didn't have the luxury of having our upbringing. I think having that perspective, it gives us an ability to see the importance of these issues. Whereas I feel like if you grew up in a big city and maybe you visit some of these places once a year, like one national park in a year, you're not necessarily going to see through that lens of the long-term impacts of policy and conservation issues.
Oh, 100%. Part of the thing that I see in some of these natural spaces or from overcrowding or over tourism is get a lot of traffic, and that can impact wildlife migration patterns if you've got bumper to bumper traffic through, a national park or forest area. And I'll have people that are from maybe Los Angeles or New York City be like, well, this isn't traffic, anything like where I live. And I'm like, well, this also isn't an area where elk migrate. You don't live, the elk don't migrate through the middle of downtown New York City. So, while, yeah, you guys have traffic there too, I'm a lot more concerned about, hundreds and thousands of cars on a busy Memorial Day weekend in an area where elk also migrate through.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. So I understand that you've got a background in law and justice studies and sociology, which I think is unique to the photography space. How has that background shaped the way that you approach public lands and conservation?
Yeah, so and my background is in that 'cause I'm a very justice-oriented person. So
Oh,
I
I
think,
couldn't have guessed that.
I think though that, part of that is when I see a rule about public lands, whether it's, no droning in wilderness areas, or I see, any sort of rules, that is the rule. Like I am very much like that is the black letter law of the rule. And so I think that helps and hurts me because I see people if they are violating those rules, and I'm like, there's no excuse. Like it's very clear. And with my background, then I am able to read those rules. Like I get into it with people all the time going on the droning piece because, you can't drone in federally designated wilderness areas or national parks. And they'll say, well, I took like off my drone from outside the park. I'm like, yes, but if you go into the regulations, you also have to keep your drone in line of sight. And where you were from where you say that you took off, it wouldn't have been in the line of sight. And so I'm very particular about the very specifics of rules. And I think I do know a lot of photographers like to sometimes ignore the rules. If it suits them, I'll see all the time someone will have an amazing video online and people will be like, I've never seen this perspective of that place before. And I'm like, you haven't, because it's illegal to drone there. Like, it's a great video. It's beautiful. It was done illegally. And so, I think that kind of brings that perspective in for me where I just have that sort of baseline of like, these are the rules. That's the black letter law rules. If you don't like the rules, then, figure out maybe the why that they're there. And, if you really think it's a dumb rule, try to get it changed then, but, don't break it. And so I think that like that justice studies law piece kind of fits into how I view rules in the outdoor space. And then the sociology aspect, I think, just helps me analyze how and why people do things that I see outdoors that aren't exactly great.
Yeah, and maybe we should have done this at the start, but like, How would you describe your photography and kind of how you've made it a part of your life? Because I'm gonna use some words that might be triggering for you or for others, but like I sort of see you as like an influencer of sorts in terms of like you're working with tourism boards and you're working with local agencies to use your photography to promote places, and you're getting money in exchange for some of those services. And but with a twist is like I don't necessarily see you having the same sorts of mindset that a lot of those influencer types. I mean, in the circles I run in, the word influencer is kind of like a dirty
Yeah.
word. So I'd be curious to hear you talk a little bit about that frame of mind and that reference point.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say that I've reached out to tourism boards before when I see that they're working with someone and I'm like, they're not doing it the right way. Like, let me do it the right way. And so anytime I've reached out to them, which I've had a lot that don't want to work with someone because I say, hey, you know, I'd love to work with you on a responsible recreation lens. Let's showcase places in your area that people can actually visit without damaging them. Places that I think have seen a lot of damage or impact are more open to that versus a lot of places like I've had responses before where they're like, well, we don't really need to focus on that leave no trace stuff. Like, yeah, you do. I had a tourism board I reached out to and I'm like, here's an idea. I'd love to come. And I also want to showcase like why people need to stay off cryptobiotic soils. It was not in Arizona. It's in a different state. And they were like, we don't have that here. And I'm like, yes, you do. And you should be focused on telling people to not trample all over it. And so, I think it goes back to like, I've always been taking photos and, just landscape things usually, and I wasn't in them. In 2020, I started seeing, the influx of people going outside and showcasing our public lands. And I saw big influencer accounts and I would message them. I would comment. I'd be like, hey, can you talk about Leave No Trace? Hey, you just showcased this, but it's not actually an official trail. Can you amend your post? Hey, you just showcased this and then there was a bunch of trash there the next weekend. Can you like talk to people about like picking up after themselves? None of them responded to me. None of them would respond. None of them would talk about Leave No Trace. And I finally got so mad. I was like, screw it. I'm going to make my page public and I'm going to get people to follow me because I'm going to talk about it. Like I was frustrated because I was reaching out to these big influencer accounts and none of them would respond to me or even talk about it. And so I think that's why is like I went into it not from like I want to be an influencer. And I have a full-time lawyer job and I like being a lawyer. I went into it from if you guys are going to do this the right way, I'm going to come into your space and I'm going to do it the right way kind of attitude.
That's cool. Yeah, I didn't realize that about you. And I think that's beautiful because that's something that's frustrated me a lot over the years. I'm not sure if you're familiar with a movement called Nature First, but that's actually something that I helped create back in 2018 in response to all the same kind of things you noticed, mostly here in Colorado, things that I noticed about people with huge Instagram accounts taking videos of some of these super fragile high alpine locations that I'm in love with. And then, of course, like the next year, it went from like having 20, 30 people at the trailhead a month to like 600 or 700 a day. And like those places cannot handle that form of influx in people. It's not feasible.
Exactly. And that's the big thing is like they didn't want to have those conversations. And I mean, back then I had like, 900 people following me. And so no one's going to listen to me. I can post all I want about doing something the right way. And they're going to be like, who is this person? I don't care what they say. And that's why like going off of that, it's funny. I have been preemptively blocked by a lot of big, big, big accounts. And so I think it's because people started to know that like I was seeing what people were doing wrong and then sometimes calling it out. And so, yeah, sometimes I'll get sent something online and they're like, did you see this person who was on this alpine tundra? And I'm like, I can't see it. It says post unavailable. Oh, this account with 500 plus thousand followers must have preemptively blocked me.
Wow. Yeah, that's too bad. And it's the thing is like your approach, it sounds like, has been from a very congenial perspective. Like, hey, congratulations on your viral video. Could you please address these issues in your next video? Because it would be very helpful. And like, how hard would that be to do?
It's funny because you would think it shouldn't be that hard. And I got to the point where I would start screenshotting my comments because I knew that they were going to delete them as soon as they saw them. Like, hey, I'm so glad. Like, Sedona is a perfect example. I'd be like, hey, I'm so glad you enjoyed your time in Sedona. This place that you're showcasing is actually an unofficial trail and contains an archaeological site. Would you be open to amending your blog post to, not encourage visitors to go there and encourage them to go on one of our official trails, or maybe letting people know that this is actually an archaeological site and include some information about that? And then I would get blocked and they would delete my comment. And so like I started screenshotting them a few years ago because I was like, they're just gonna delete, like they just delete and block. I mean, a lot of the people that drone illegally, I have been preemptively, I think I've been preemptively blocked by probably 20 or 30 drone accounts.
That's funny, and they're probably the most viral accounts, which is too bad as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I think a lot of this is driven by vanity and people's desire for fame and fortune. And unfortunately, a lot of these people are entering this space without any clear moral compass, very little ethical guidelines through which to follow, or they just don't care, which is even wilder to me. I mean, you see people now, like these examples you're giving, like with a hike in Sedona to a Native American ruin with carvings and things like that and rock art, and people are only posting that stuff so that they can monetize it now. It's like it's just all about the money now, you know?
It is, and that's what's so frustrating is, I like to tell people all the time, I'm like, I could have 1 million followers if I shared the places that I know in Sedona.
Me too.
If I wanted to monetize the land in that way and just like, geotag everything, and I could have 1 million followers because I go places and have photos of places that I don't think anyone else goes. I mean, I have thousands of photos of archaeological sites and rock art in the Verde Valley that will never see the light of day because they're just too fractal for anyone to see even a photo of them. And so that thing is, I think people aren't understanding and having that kind of and it's an internal thing. Like I'll have people all the time, well, they'll say, well, it's not illegal for me to post a photo of a dwelling site. And I like to say, it might not be illegal yet. Let me work on that Archaeological Resources Protection Act lobbying, but it's not illegal yet. But it's a difference between like what's legal and what's right and wrong. And I think, that's something too where I think a lot of people hang their hat on like, well, there wasn't a sign telling me I explicitly couldn't do this. And it's like, but morally and ethically, it's not right.
Yeah, I mean, I think the core definition of ethics is not doing the wrong thing, even if it's legal.
Right.
Which
yeah,
forces, I mean, to meet that requirement, you have to ask yourself the question to begin with, like, is this a good idea or not? And I think that's the piece that's been missing from a lot of people's thought process is, what's the harm in doing this? Like they just don't have that question that they're asking themselves.
Yeah, they don't have the, like, what is the impact? And like, what if I find, like, post this place and 1 million people see it, what is the impact of that 30 days from now, 60 days from now, 6 months from now, 1 year from now? Right. And that's been a thing too is, there are people, like, for instance, in Arizona, they will post something and within 30 days, it will get blown up. Like we have people that, regularly get 1, 2, 3 million views on a reel where they're geotagging and blasting locations. Those of us who actually volunteer on the land, we see the impact. I mean, I have literally had screenshots of videos sent to me from this person's account. I'll see somewhere they geotagged in my area. I will go there 2 weekends from that, and I will just count people. And thousands of people a day in a place that maybe was seen like 10. And then I'll ask people, I'll be like, hey, how'd you find out about this place? It's the same name, the same video. They're all citing the same name. And I don't think they even care about that impact, which I think is crazy. Just because, all those people, they're going because they saw a photo or a video of a place. Oh, this is a creek, a creekside spot. This looks nice. It's going to be so nice. It's hot out. They'll go. But they're not learning about leave no trace. They're not learning about picking up their trash. They're not learning about, not, pooping near the creek when it's a watershed. And they're just going. They're leaving their coolers. They're leaving their pop-ups. They just saw that video and saw that you called it Arizona's water park. And the problem is too, is, a lot of these people, and I've seen a lot of these accounts, as people start to talk about leave no trace, they realize like, oh, well, I need to say something about it. So they'll stick leave no trace at the bottom of their caption, like someone was going to get down there and read it. And I'm like, that has been a whole performative thing I've seen that started, I think, in the past 2 years in the outdoor community. Well, people will just stick leave no trace at the bottom of a video and they'll be like,
Yeah, I've
and
noticed that too.
it's so not that. It's so performative, and it's gotten to the point now where like I just see that and I roll my eyes.
Yeah. Well, obviously, social media has drastically changed the way that people interact with the outdoors. What are some of the other biggest shifts that you've seen in the past 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so I would say it's a few things. So a lot of the places I go in Sedona are places that I found just by exploring. When you grow up here, you kind of, oh, that looks like a cool little alcove with my binoculars. Let me go see if I can get up there. It looks like a cool rock. It's a cool spire. Let me see if I can go get up close to it. And I think that's the way a lot of us who grew up exploring kind of approach the outdoors is
Yeah.
for instance, I just did a hike in Colorado in your neck of the woods a few months ago in September. And I had seen a lake on Google Earth and I was like, I'm going to see if I can get to that. And that's how I've always approached the outdoors. That I think a lot of people now, what they do is they see a photo on social media and they say, I want that photo.
Right.
And it's not I'm going out into nature to experience it. It's not like that kind of, it's that sense of adventure where you're like, okay, I found this on Google Earth. I think I can get there from this. I found this old forest road that like mining road that goes there. I'm going to park there and I'm going to try to traverse these 3 peaks to get there, or like, oh, this is in this side canyon, but I'm going to have to take this other side canyon, go over this, ridge and then get to, it's not that. It's, I saw this photo. I want the fastest, easiest way possible to that. I want to take that exact photo. Once I take that photo, I'm going to leave and I'm done. Like it is completely shaped in that way where it's just people see a viral image or video and they want that exact thing. And so a lot of times what I'll find is, especially in places like Sedona, they're literally like staring at their phone, just like on their way to that viral spot. I have been out there because sometimes what I'll do is I'll just go on a cliff and like overlook the trail and I just people watch. And they don't even know I'm up there because I'm perched on a cliff high above the trail. And I'll watch people staring at their phones. I have watched people walk by an entire herd of javelina. They're not out there experiencing the nature. They're not out there seeing the wildlife that's literally right off the trail. They don't see any of it because they're just focused on how can I get there and can I get that viral photo? And so I think that's really what the disconnect I've noticed that's changed in the past, I would say like 5 years, is it's really just to get the photo to post.
Yeah, they see nature as like an extractive resource.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Like it's not this thing to experience and be a part of. I mean, like I'll go out and I'll smell ponderosa pine trees because they smell sweet. And I have some of my favorite pine trees up in the Upper Coconino National Forest near Humphreys Peak. They're really soft. And so I always like to also touch like when there's like the new growth. You know what I mean? Like I'm out there, or like I have some trees that are my favorite manzanita trees because their bark is really colorful in this certain area of one of our canyons. I'm going out there to like check on the tree bark, and everyone else is just stuck to their phone trying to be like, oh, this is the viral photo that I'm going to try to copy.
Yeah, it's it's wild. Well, you brought up geotagging, and it's obviously a hot topic of conversation and in discussions and social media. Walk us through your approach for geotagging and what factors you consider before sharing a location.
Yeah, so the number one is it an official trail and an official location? If it is not an official trail, absolutely not. Like 100% no geotagging. But if it is an official trail, then there's still a few factors I look at. So is there a good parking area? For instance, there are some official trails that have like 3-4 car spots for parking.
Right.
It's not a great place to geotag because a bunch of people are going to want to go there and they're going to end up parking on plants and they're going to end up creating their own spots and they're going to end up destroying sort of the underbrush of the forest or whatever they're trying to park on, or they're going to park dangerously. So there's not a lot of parking. I'm not geotagging it. Another piece I look at is there facilities. So is there a bathroom at the trailhead? Is there a trash can at the trailhead? Because those people are going to have to use the bathroom. If there's no bathroom, they're going to start going to the bathroom in the woods, and they're probably not bringing wet bags. So I'm not going to geotag if there's no bathroom or like trash can there at the trailhead. The other things I look at, so is there, any archaeological sites or protected sites like on the trail or near the trail? If there is, also not going to geotag it because I'm too worried that someone's going to maybe find those things, see those things, and I don't want to contribute to their destruction.
Yeah.
Another thing I look at is if it's a sensitive riparian area. So, if it's a sensitive riparian area, even if there is a trail, and there might be a small pit toilet at the trailhead with a little trash can in it, if a bunch of people go there and they're swimming and they're wearing sunscreen and they're wearing bug spray and they're getting in the water and the dogs are running around and their dogs, is it still going to potentially impact the health of that watershed? If so, I'm also not going to geotag it. And so, I think something I always look at is the land manager's website, because if that spot isn't on the land manager's website, there's obviously a reason.
Yeah, for sure. And I think those are all good points. I mean, my main thing is infrastructure and thinking about like, if for some weird reason, 1 million people see my post, like, and they want to go there, can it handle it?
Right. Exactly. And
if the answer is no, then I just say, well, I'm not going to geotag it.
And I think the reason a lot of people don't want to have that discussion or do that analysis is because I think that they know that the answer most times is no.
Almost always.
Yeah, like, for instance, and I tell people all the time, like, when I see people geotagging off-trail spots in Sedona, and I'm like, hey, would you mind to maybe, like, remove that geotag? I'm always like, but feel free to go to Cathedral Rock. There's a shuttle that takes people there. It's
Right.
sandstone. The trail's, like, very clear. Like, we can handle a ton of traffic there. Like, please, send them there. Safe, happy, nice, good. Like,
Right.
and so I think that's part of it is I'm like, there is this alternative, but, that's not edgy. It's not going to probably get a bazillion views because everyone knows about it. But I think that's the thing is like, I think a lot of people aren't doing the analysis because they think that they know inherently that I would say like 80% of the time, at least, the answer probably is this place can't handle 1 billion people.
I mean, I feel like a lot of those people have probably thought about it for at least a few minutes, and they decided that their income and their fame and their fortune is more important.
Oh, it's 100%. I do think a lot of people say, well, why would they do that? Because they're making their money off the outdoors. And I'm like, and if the outdoors cease to exist tomorrow, they would pivot into being like lifestyle or travel or
Right.
food bloggers. Like they would just pivot their content into, oh, well, this is my house and this is how I this is how I grow a garden. And this is how I, decorate for spring. Like they would 100% pivot. And I've actually seen it in the outdoor travel space where I've seen some people that, used to be outdoor content creators, they have pivoted to that space. And I'm like, yeah, like they would just pivot. Like the outdoors is a means to an end. And I think I saw what one of my favorite things to do is if I see someone that's geotagging things that I don't think should be geotagged or just kind of operating online in a way that I don't necessarily approve of, I like to scroll back on their account. I like to see how far back I can get. And I find one of two things. I find that it's either a new account where they opened it in the past few years for the purpose of posting nature and outdoor stuff, and that, because my account, you can go back all the way to the inception of Instagram. Like, it's always
Yeah,
been
me
there.
too. Don't,
Right.
Please don't, but you can.
Or I find something else very interesting is pre-2020, they were trying to be an influencer of another type. I found people that were trying to be food bloggers. I found people that were trying to be gym, like fitness influencers. I have found people that were trying to be travel influencers. And they all pivoted to outdoors in 2020. Well, yeah, you can't showcase restaurants and food. The restaurants are closed. You can't
Right.
showcase gyms. The gyms are closed. You can't showcase travel. No one's traveling on airplanes. And it is one of two things 90% of the time. They either created their account specifically for this because they saw some viral account that was making money doing it, or they tried and failed at doing something else, and then COVID pivoted them in to this outdoor travel space.
Yeah, and I can hear them all saying right now, like, well, I have to make money somehow.
Yeah. I think there's a way to do it. right? I have a really good friend. She's a nature photographer. She doesn't geotag anything. She makes good money. She has contracts with huge brands because her photography speaks for itself.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's a perfect segue into my next line of questioning because I know that you've had some interesting interactions with the people who are funding these people, including yourself, tourism boards, brands. What responsibility do you feel that those entities who are paying these people to produce this content have in terms of expecting them or requiring them to do it in a responsible way?
Yeah, so I think they have a huge responsibility. I think that there should be leave no trace riders in every single contract that they have. But also, I think that they should be vetting the content more carefully. For instance, I see sponsored content all the time that is in off-trail areas. I saw a tent ad a few years ago where someone has sent the tent up on alpine tundra. And I'm like, who's vetting this? Like, the thing is, I think that a lot of these brands have, maybe low-level employees or younger employees or newer employees that are vetting these. And if you're an outdoor brand for tents, you should have someone looking at the area that ad was set up and make sure that the tent actually could be there. I mean, I think that they have a huge responsibility to do that. And a lot of times you see brands where they'll get called out, like, for instance, like, oh, yes, your vehicle ad was actually done off trail and someone is driving through the woods on a non-road. Look, we had no idea. Okay, but why aren't you asking these people? Like, they should be asking the content creators, where are you shooting this? Show me that it's allowed. I don't know why none of that's getting vetted. It's just like, oh, pretty place, awesome video, good post. And you see it in a lot of areas where, sometimes brands are even encouraging people to not disclose partnerships properly. And so, I'm not surprised that they're not vetting the location and ensuring that they're adhering to land manager rules or like leave no trace. But I think everyone needs to be doing better. I think that a lot of people also need to use their voice. For instance, I have a lot of brands I know will never work with me because I'm the one commenting when I see something and I'm like, this was off trail. Why are you posting this? Like, why are you having this be an ad? And I'm sure they're like, she's annoying. Put her on our list of people that we don't ever want to talk to. But that I think is what's so frustrating is sometimes I'll go on and I'll see an ad that was done off trail or in an area that's not allowed. I look at all the other comments. There's hundreds of comments like, this is so great. I love this so much. And I'm like, hello, outdoor community. Like, why am I the only one being like, hey, this was off trail. This isn't an area that's not allowed. You can't actually set up a tent there. This is actually an area that doesn't even allow overnight camping. Like, why do I sometimes feel like I'm like maybe one or two of the voices where there's 500 positive comments and there's maybe me and like two other people being like, hey, you can't do that. So I think the brands have a responsibility, but also I think the outdoor community as a whole has a responsibility to actually look at the content and see whether or not it is actually promoting something good before you just green stamp approve and be like, this looks so great.
Yeah, and I struggle with that too because I don't want to be that guy like that's constantly just complaining in the comments about something not like passing that sniff test. And I want those agencies to have a higher standard so that the people that actually care about that kind of stuff are the ones that are creating it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, like I've been saying for like the past year or so, I'm like I would love it if, every state or like land managers could actually recommend people like, hey, this person's leave no trace certified, or we know this person will do the right thing. Like if you want to create content in, the San Juans, these 4 or 5 people know the rules. They won't illegally drone. They're not going to go off trail. They're not going to trample alpine tundra. Like I wish that there was kind of a collaboration. I wish that there was a collaboration with brands and tourism boards to come up with lists of people that maybe know an area and, can do it the right way. Because, for instance, I know Arizona very well. I know the Southwest very well. Like, I feel like I could look at a map and I'd be like, yes, no, bad place, good place. That can handle it. Like, that's going to have too much cryptobiotic soil. Like, that's a fragile watershed. And I know there's people like me in the PNW, in Colorado, in Utah, in Montana, in California. And so I'm like, there's those of us that have the institutional knowledge from living there, from, recreating those areas, and just from, volunteer work that we do with these organizations, that we have the knowledge, but no one's tapping into that knowledge.
Yeah, and I think ultimately it comes down to dollar signs. I had a experience a couple of years ago. I was actually contacted by the NFL to do this huge photo project for the Super Bowl in Arizona, and they gave me this whole shot list location of places that they wanted to be photographed, like in the winter, and I happen to know, like, okay, the photographs that you're wanting to get, those places you can't access them, and also this location you need a permit. You need a permit for this. You need a permit for that. And like their response back to me was, "Well, we're the NFL. Well, that shouldn't be a big deal for us." And like, surprised I didn't get that particular contract, and actually I know the person who did get it, and he's a really good dude, and I know he would follow those rules. But I think it's just it's an indicator of, I think the brands really don't care about that stuff. All they care about is the end result.
Well, right. And I think too, I know like myself, and I know a few other photographers who they don't get a lot of work because we're the ones saying, well, do we have the permits? Well, I know this place doesn't really allow commercial talk. Like we're the ones actually coming in and saying, well, here's the way to do it the right way. And the response I generally get back is like, okay, well, we've got 20 other people who aren't even asking these questions and don't care.
Right. Exactly. Which is too bad.
It is too bad, because I mean, all the time I'll see, ads that are done in Sedona, and I'm like, I know you didn't get a permit for that ad because the Forest Service isn't going to grant a permit somewhere off trail.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, I know you spend a lot of your time online advocating for volunteer work and conservation efforts, trail cleanups, things like that. And I know it's also frustrating to see so many photographers and influencers drive tons and tons of traffic to these locations that we love without contributing to those conservation efforts. How can we encourage more accountability within the outdoor community?
So I think there's a few ways. One is, I think it really comes down to the people that follow accounts in the outdoor community. So I always wonder with some of those big accounts that are, posting, for instance, in Sedona, Oak Creek runs through Sedona, accounts that are posting Oak Creek repeatedly through the summer, every single weekend, encouraging people to go there, getting millions of views every time. Why is no one asking those people that follow? Like, why is none of their followers saying, like, hey, do you give back? Like, do you clean up this place that you're posing every single weekend? Why is no one asking that question? I think that's one, is I think that everyone needs to be a better consumer of media. And I think that people need to view social media as media. And, if you're gonna, I think we would ask the same questions of news stations. I think we would ask the same questions of shows, or, large, entities that are trying to showcase places. You'd say, well, how are you giving back? I think we need to be asking those questions of people too, if they're going to be kind of holding themselves out as media online. Mm-hmm. There's some influencer accounts that get more views than most news stations. They just do. And so if you're going to be getting more views than the night news telling people where to go this weekend, why is the general public not asking you what you're doing to help give back to that place? And so I think that's one, is just people need to be, a little bit smarter and more conscientious consumers of media. But then I think too, I think there needs to be an industry policing, because for me, I've had people kind of characterize me as like mean, because I'm the one that's saying like, well, if you're going to be showcasing that place, what are you doing to give back? Okay, like you're posting all these places in this specific area, what are you doing to give back? Like, oh, I see you did 7 ads near Zion. What are you doing to give back to that area? And so I'm usually one of the only voices saying that, though. And I think that goes back to, a lot of people have a lot of friends, and, a lot of these big accounts, they've got maybe 50 other content creators or influencers who are also their friends, and they all engage and interact on each other's posts. Why are you not self-policing your community? Because if I see someone, like, I have a few good friends, like, if we do self-police each other. We're like, hey, I need to do a cleanup in this spot, or we should clean up this spot, or, this spot looks like it's getting trashed. We should go clean it up. I don't know why these people aren't self-policing each other. And I think that if maybe their following started to ask those questions, maybe they would start, being encouraged to self-police within the community. But I think it's twofold. I think people need to be kind of asking those questions of the people and the accounts they follow. And if you follow an account and you see that they've never posted anything about giving back, it's because they're not doing it. I mean, I've had people sometimes say to me, like, well, maybe they are secretly. They would post about it. These people would post about it if they were doing it. They would be having selfies with the trash picker by the creek if they were coming to the cleanups. They're not. And, I think that's a big part of it is I think that they rely on, people just assuming that, oh, they're doing stuff behind the scenes. And my counterpoint to that is if you were doing it, one, you should be posting about it because you're trying to influence people to do whatever you're doing. You're saying, and here it was great. I'm trying to influence you to go here. Then if you were cleaning things up, why wouldn't you post a video about it? Why wouldn't you make a post about it? Because you're trying to influence people to do the right thing. You should be trying to influence them to go clean things up.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point, and there's lots of different ways for photographers and not just influencers to do that. For example, the workshop company I work for, Munch Workshops, we do a lot of workshops in public lands in Utah that are sensitive locations that have, some Native American rock sites, rock art sites and things like that. But we partner with some of the local conservation agencies that do a lot of conservation and stewardship efforts in those areas. And we actually donate a portion of our proceeds from doing the workshops to those organizations because we understand that like without those organizations doing the work that they do, we're not able to actually go to those places and teach people photography in those places. So, and that's a whole other sticky wicket in terms of like deciding how to do workshops and how many people to bring with you and which places to go to. But I think if you're going to go to places that have some of those sensitivities, you should be thinking about your role in helping to maintain them as the status quo or to make them better than you found them.
100%. I mean, for every like partnership I've ever done, I've donated money back to land organizations from whatever money. I mean, I've had some where I've donated the whole thing. Like, okay, that was the $500 that I got from a post. That's going to this land organization. Like, and I know that I'm fortunate enough to have another job where that's how I make my money, and this is just kind of a bonus. But even for people where it's their full-time job, like you're saying, like put some money back in to where you're taking it out of, because I just don't understand that mindset of it's just like take, but then it's never give.
Yeah, and how hard would it be, right? Like you have you have like a 80-second reel on Instagram. Like, why can't you dedicate 15 seconds of it to talk about things that people can do to make sure that it's a clean place when they leave?
Exactly.
It's not hard.
No, and I mean, even like, just from like, I don't understand why, even when it's like Arizona Gives Day, for instance, or, we're doing a big push for donations. I've reached out to people before and I'm like, hey, would you share this nonprofit's post? And they're like, oh, I only do stuff when it's paid. And I'm like, okay, so you won't share this nonprofit land post about trying to raise money for the land that you exploit on your story? Got it.
I hate to laugh, but it's sad.
It's sad, and there's some days where I'm like, it's mind blowing. It's truly like I have to look at it, and I end up speechless, which is crazy. But I'm like, I have no words for this. Why it is just take, and then if anyone says like, hey, can you just maybe like share this thing on your story, like to donate to this like land management nonprofit, it's like, oh no, I can't do that.
And it's wild because I have a lot of friends who are passionate about these types of issues, and a lot of them have like 1,000, maybe 5,000 followers, but like they're constantly posting stuff like this, like, hey, donate to this nonprofit. They're doing cleanup efforts in this place that I'm really in love with and that I love to photograph. And I just wish the bigger accounts that had a massive following would follow suit. It wouldn't, it's not hard.
It's really not. And I think that's part of what I think has been a little frustrating as my account has grown, is like sometimes people will come onto my page and like it's people that I think would agree with me that, all this conversation we're saying, but they see that I have a big following and that I post outdoor photos and they're like, well, you're a part of the problem. And I'm like, okay, but like click on my link tree. All it is links to nonprofits that you can donate to. Like I'm like, I've got Leave No Trace on there and a bunch of nonprofits like that, give back to the land. Or, if you actually go through, you'll be like, oh, she doesn't really geotag things, And so I think that's part of it is people are so used, like people that do believe in the conservation, they're so used to seeing the bigger accounts not do anything that then I think like everyone that maybe has a bigger account just gets lumped into it. And so, that's been something that's been, I think, like hard for me to be like, wait, like, because I mean, also, I would say I've gotten the most of my following from people. Like I had a viral reel go viral about Glen Canyon and I don't necessarily agree with the damming of it. I think I got like 20,000 followers from that video. So I'm like, these are people that are following me that are like, conservation, keeping places wild. And so I think people, I got a ton of followers about not stacking rocks, not, graffitiing rocks. And so I think people see that and, they see the number and they're like, oh, she must be just out here geotagging everything. And it's like, no, actually, I've gotten most of them from posting about kind of controversial conservation topics.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, try to make it a little bit more positive. Are there any individuals or organizations that you admire who are doing a great job of balancing promotion and stewardship?
So I would say like for tourism boards, I've always been very impressed with Visit Bend. So I haven't worked with them, so this is not me like promoting someone I've worked with. I'm just like, I've kind of from an outsider perspective, I see that they have like responsible tourism pledge that they encourage people to sign. But I've also noticed is that they don't really have like it's not like the geotagging clickbaity types of videos or posts when I've seen that they've worked with anyone or promoted things. It's really like a focus on leave no trace, visiting and having like kind of your own experience. And I think it does extremely well. And I think like I've looked to them as like, oh, that looks like a great tourism organization that seems to be doing it the right way. So that's what I would say is a tourism organization that I've just noticed from an outsider perspective where I'm like, oh, it looks like they're actually focused on the right things. Some other, organizations that I obviously think are great as, I see, national forests and I, see a lot of those large scale nonprofits. I think that they do great work. I've always been, impressed with kind of how they run their campaigns. Again, I haven't worked with any of them, so this is not me coming from a biased perspective. It's just kind of an outsider view. I've seen that go really well. And then obviously, I think part of it is I think there's a lot of great nonprofits and organizations doing a lot of good work, but they can't pay people. And so I think even for the people that are saying, I have a big account, but I don't have, a whole Saturday to give back and go clean up trash or blah, 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 blah. Well, then why aren't you reaching out to these large nonprofits that do great work, like the National Forest Organization or, those types of organizations and offering to do a collaborative post with them for free? Because I think that would be a great way to give back too.
Yeah, and easy, right? Like they obviously have a talent for creating interesting content that goes viral. And why not use that power for good, right?
Right. I mean, I don't know how people are asking nonprofits to pay them. That's crazy. But as someone that works on two nonprofits that you don't have a lot of money when you're on a nonprofit. Like a lot of the people that like, oh, well, I can't do the, make a post for them or I don't want to work with them unless they pay me. I'm like, you don't understand the small budget of nonprofits. Like that should be an amazing way for content creators to get back.
Yeah, easy, right? Well, I know you'd mentioned, or we've mentioned a few times in this podcast episode about indigenous locations, and there's a lot of them here in the Southwest. And these places have a lot of historical significance. What steps do you take to ensure that you're respecting these spaces?
Yeah, so I, really like to know kind of the history of the land that I'm recreating on. So I think that's always a good first step is like if you're going to go somewhere new, kind of just trying to figure out like whose land was it, what tribes call this their ancestral homeland, But then, like, especially in the Southwest, you're not only on the ancestral homeland, but at many times you may be coming across still like sacred archaeological sites, like we've discussed, whether it's dwelling sites, pit houses, whether it is rock art, petroglyphs, pictographs. And so I think when it comes to that, I always encourage people to review archaeological site guidance before going out and hiking in the Southwest. I think, the Bears Ears Partnership has a ton of great resources about visiting with respect. They have a whole visit with respect page, and it doesn't just apply to Bears Ears National Monument. That can be applied in Colorado. It can be applied across Utah. It can be applied in New Mexico and Arizona. And it really talks about all the facets of visiting with respect that people need to, be cognizant of when they're traveling in the Southwest. For instance, not touching rock art, not leaning on archaeological sites. A lot of the time I'll see people maybe lean their, and I'll see a photo and someone's posted an archaeological site and they're leaning their bag up on the archaeological site or their water bottle sitting on a wall. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's not a table that you can just put stuff on. And then also, dogs. I'll see people, if there's a trail that has archaeological sites along it, yeah, it's dog friendly. I'm like, no, it's not. You're not supposed to have dogs at archaeological sites because the smell of dogs can cause other wildlife to get near in the archaeological site, which then they can knock over the wall. And so, I think going through and understanding the visit with respect guidelines and that they apply all over the Southwest to any archaeological site you come across, not just in Bears Ears, but also, being familiar with them and then practicing them. I think that's really the best that people can do. But also on the other flip side of it too, is I see a lot of people posting photos of archaeological sites or rock art. Many of the tribes consider like rock art so sacred that it shouldn't even be, photographed or posted. And so some tribes may, consider photographs of rock art to be disrespectful. But also archaeological sites, I'll have people say all the time, they're like, well, the post picture, like, but I didn't geotag it. And so I did, a good thing. And the guidance actually says not to post pictures that can give any, post at all that give any sort of locational data. And so for something that a lot of people don't think of is if they have a photo and it's like looking out of an archaeological site in Sedona, for instance, if you have the background in there, the foreground where you can actually see what the dwelling site is looking out of, I can figure out where you are because I know the rock formations.
Mm-hmm.
I can see Capel Butte, or I can see Bell Rock, or I can see, a rock and I will know where you're at. And I can do it in Utah too, and you can do it so easily now with Google Earth. And so even if you're not saying, okay, here's the coordinates, or if you're not saying like this is in blah, blah, blah canyon, if you post a photo looking out from a dwelling site or a rock art site and you can see what the view is from there, there's a lot of people that are still going to be able to figure out where it is. So you are giving locational data.
Yeah, that's a tough one that I know that a lot of landscape photographers struggle with because I'm just going to use my close friend Wayne Suggs as an example. He's an amazing photographer and he has a really deep, passionate connection with a lot of these rock art ruin sites and petroglyphs and he's like the most staunch protector of these places. Like if he finds out people are sharing where they're at, like he hunts them down. I mean, he's super serious about it, but like it's some of his most amazing photography is from these sites. And I think he struggles with this because, he wants to share the beauty of these places and share his connection with these places with his audience. But at the same time, he doesn't want to do it in a way that encourages other people to go there who might not be equipped with the information or knowledge to do so in a respectful way. So it's a tough one.
It's extremely tough. I mean, it is beautiful, and it's just, that's why I always say, like, I've got thousands of photos of archaeological sites that will never see the light of day because they're beautiful. But with where we're at right now, where I think people have, like, the rules with respect to posting, I think, we're way behind on the law with, the Antiquities Act and the Archaeological Resources Protection Act. I think right now I just can't trust the general public enough to share those photos. And I always like to say, like, I think in like 15, 20 years, books in school where people are, studying to be an archaeologist, they're going to talk about social media and the destruction of archaeological sites. I truly think they will. because of the geotagging of the sites or just how easy like people have made it to find them. And so, I think until the law has caught up, it's just so scary to me to even want to share anything about them, which sucks because when I do educational content on it, I like have to be very careful where I'm like, okay, so this video only shows the wall like this, but there's no way to tell where it's at. And I can use this one because it's in a canyon where there's no like features where you can identify where it's at. And like you have to be very, very careful because I'm like, it's a balance where I'm like, well, I need to tell people how to act at these places if they do happen to find them, but I do not want to show them any clips of anything that's going to have like lead them to any of them. So it's a hard line to balance. It's unfortunate because they are beautiful, and I think part of it is there's a lot of people that don't even realize they're there. So if I post a photo where you can't see kind of where it's at in a canyon, I've posted photos in literally unnamed canyons, like from unnamed canyons in Utah. And all of people be like, is that Mesa Verde?
Yeah.
Like, no.
And then you have that other guy who's like, oh, here's the GPS coordinates. I've been there. It's like, come on, man.
I will say something I do, if I do post something where, it's like from that educational purpose where I'm like, hey, these are all over the Southwest. They're not just in Mesa Verde. This is why you need to like visit with respect. I will, like if it's in a canyon that has a name or if I would like pull the coordinates, I will put those in my blocked words and phrases on Instagram before I post it. Because I'm like, if one of you wants to try to blow the location of this, good luck. It's going to get flagged and it's not even going to show up. So
I didn't even know you could do that. That's a great idea.
Oh yeah, no, I will like very specifically do that if I'm posting something where I'm like, okay, here's a photo. I want to talk about conservation. I don't want someone to blow up what this spot is. I'll just like if the name of the canyon was like Bob's Canyon, I'm gonna stick Bob's Canyon in like my like blocked words and phrases, and I'm like, okay, good luck.
That's a good idea. Yeah, no, it's interesting because I think it goes back to the fact that a lot of people haven't seen that gradual erosion of these places over time, and I think it was you I saw had a post a couple of weeks ago talking about someone who was monetizing like a guide post or a guidebook on Sedona sites, like an influencer type situation where they had like put in a very specific kind of hard, like off trail ruin site. And you asked them politely not to please do not share this location. And then you showed all these examples of like 10 years ago, it looked like this, 8 years ago, 7, 6, 5, and now it looks like this. And you can just see the gradual degradation of that location based on how many people have reshared its location over time.
Yeah. So that one in particular, it's an insane story because I found it many, many years ago just from exploring, like came across it. And no, I would say it probably maybe saw like 5 people a year.
Right.
The dwelling site is part of our site steward database. So the Forest Service and the Arizona Site Steward Foundation, which I'm a part of, we have a database of sites. And so that site has been a part of the database. So I would say it was probably visited like by 5 people maybe a year. Like there was no social trail to it. It was completely off trail. I got there by like, I'd been up on the slick rock above it and come down like a side canyon. No one's finding that unless you're just out there like exploring like myself and like a few other locals do. And there was no path. There's tons of leaves out in that side canyon, so like just lots of leaves in that area, and there used to be bears that lived in that side canyon that I would frequently see out in that side canyon. And then an individual found it and decided to give it a name, which we can have another discussion someday about my thoughts on people just naming things, but but they decided to give it a name. And they started going on to Arizona, hiking Facebook groups and online and being like, I found this place and here's exactly how you get there. And another individual that they were friends with decided to go on all trails. And what people could do on all trails, which I have an issue with, is you can go to a trail and then you can go off trail and make your own route and then you can attach it to that trail. And then this person was going in the comments every single day, putting a review, being like, hey, if you want to see this place on this photo, go to my track and follow it. And then go follow me on Instagram. And so that person was posting every day, and then people start following that track, and they don't think a lot of people realize too is on all trails, if enough people follow someone's track that is off trail, All Trail's algorithm will automatically adjust the route to that. So then All Trail's algorithm all of a sudden adjusts it from the official trail, the official system trail on Kokney National Forest, to this off-trail route. So, meanwhile, myself and like 3 other people are like raising the alarm. We're like, this is bad. All Trails needs to remove this. Like, you guys need to kick these people out of these Facebook groups. Like, like someone needs to do something. This is terrible. And everyone kind of acted like we were just being alarmists. Like, oh, people aren't going to destroy that. It's not going to be, you're just being crazy, blah, 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 blah. And so then I start seeing like 2021, 2022, like I'm still like emailing the Forest Service like weekly, being like, this person posted another like blog on how to get there. And now that place sees about 1,000 to 2,000 people a day. It was receiving 5 people a year. The wall to the dwelling site was knocked over. The petroglyph, it's a really nice turtle petroglyph, one of the only of its kind in Arizona, that is next to the dwelling site, has been graffitied over. I've lost count of how many times it's been graffitied over in the past few years. People have drawn phallic images on it. People have drawn curse words over it, and you can't just go clean the graffiti off. You actually need someone that's certified to remove graffiti on rock art. So you have to actually, the forest or the corresponding organizations that support the forest have to pay for someone to come out and clean it. And there's not that many people certified to remove graffiti from Sonoran rock art sites. So I'm sure you can imagine how difficult that is. But it sees thousands of people a day. So I'd reached out to people before the damage happened because I was like, this is going to get knocked over. Because I was, again, going out there taking photos. People were starting to stack rocks on top of the walls. And I'm like, that's going to compromise the structural integrity of the wall and it's going to fall over. And everyone's like, you're crazy. And I'm like, that's what's going to happen. So then the wall gets knocked over, whether it was from the people to stacking rocks or, I would go out there and I would sit there and people would like try to use the wall because there's like a cliff edge to kind of like steady themselves on, please don't touch the wall. Please don't touch the wall. I could sit out there all day and tell people, please don't touch the wall. I remember I was in Washington, visiting a friend, and I get a message that's like, the wall's been knocked over. We call it the turtle site. The wall's been knocked over at the turtle site. I'm like, someone sends me a photo. So I start reaching out to the influencers who had blogged about how to get there. And I'm like, hey, like I've been saying, this is going to get destroyed. Will you please consider removing your directions to this off-trail site now? And they basically told me to go stick it where the sun doesn't shine.
It doesn't surprise me at all. I'll just say that.
Oh, no, it was, I think the most annoying part of that, and it's, people started to, like, weaponize the term gatekeeper.
Oh, of course.
It's become
my
a
God.
trendy term where someone wants to call someone a gatekeeper, and then everyone's like, yeah, they're bad. And so they just latched onto that term of like, well, Ashley, it's a gatekeeper. And I'm like, well, here is the Arizona guidance that says don't post where archaeological sites are. But if you don't want to listen to that, like, here's the Bears Ears guidance about like don't post archaeological sites in the Southwest. But like, if you don't want to listen to that, here's the indigenous field guide that says don't share archaeological sites in the Southwest. But if you don't want to listen to that, like, can I connect you with someone in the local tribe who will also be able to explain to you like why this is harmful? And it was at that point that like they were just like, I don't want to talk to you. So, I think that's been part of it is you can give people like resource after resource after resource, and when they're just like, like I'm not gonna listen, you're like,
ultimately people don't want to be told what to do or what they can and cannot do, especially in America. It's like built into our entire way of thinking and our way of life that like we have individualism and we have freedom, and that's all great and good, but it also leads to these weird deleterious effects of the environment that has a lot of negative side effects. It also comes down to, for whatever reason, I've noticed people from a certain generation after me, and I don't want to sound like an old man, but like they're just entitled to information and knowledge, like because the internet has always been there in their entire life, and all they ever had to do was like type a few words into Google and they could find everything they needed. And they don't want that barrier to entry. They feel like you're causing some kind of harm to them by telling them they can't just get whatever they want right now. And I think that is really what is driving a lot of this, is those two factors combined.
Oh, 100%. I think, and it goes back to that no one's like really going out and experiencing nature. They have the photo that they want to
Right.
emulate and copy. And they want to get there. How do I get there? How do I get there? Like in the easiest, shortest way possible. And so I completely agree I have people all the time, or like if I post a photo and they're like, where is this? And it's like, I'm not telling you. They're like, well, you're a gatekeeper. And I'm like, well, I don't have a gate out there in the wilderness. So like, you're more than welcome to go find it yourself.
I know.
And, they also, I think, come in with that assumption where they're like, well, someone told you where that was. And it's just factually not true. Like, most of the places I find, especially here, because I live here, it's just literally me being out there and being on a ridge and being like, oh, I wonder what's over there. Let's see if we can get over there. And I think they also don't realize is like for every pretty photo I have in Sedona, I have another 10 hike attempts where I actually never got to the place I was trying to go to. I got stuck in cat claw, scratched by manzanita, cut up. Like, I've got branches in my hair. And it's like, yeah, you see the end result of like maybe there's an alcove that I've had on my radar for like a few months and I've tried to get there like 4 times. And you see
Right.
the end result photo of like the 5th time when I eventually got there. But you don't see the other 4 attempts where I got scratched up and like clawed and like ripped my clothes figuring out how to get there.
Exactly. I know. Well, I know you've been involved with some nonprofit organizations like Oak Creek Watershed Council and the Arizona Site Steward Foundation. Can you tell us more about the work that they do and how people can get involved?
Yeah, so Oak Creek Watershed Council, we are the organization that really kind of manages the health of Oak Creek and really working to protect Oak Creek. And Oak Creek is the riparian area that goes through Sedona. So it comes off the Mogollon Rim south of Flagstaff, goes through the Sedona area, and eventually connects to the Verde River. So it does, go into one of Arizona's wild and scenic watersheds. About 10, 15 years ago, Oak Creek was actually, considered a polluted riparian area. From Department of Environmental Quality reports, there was a lot of E. coli, and that specifically was kind of contributed to recreation. Slide Rock State Park is a very famous state park, and Oak Creek, and a lot of people go there in the summer. And so we were seeing a lot of, habitat degradation. We were seeing a lot of social trails going down the Oak Creek. And so we've been working on a lot of things, specifically any dog waste stations you see around Sedona on any of the Sedona trails. Those are owned and managed by Oak Creek Watershed Council. So we have a employee that goes, cleans out the dog waste from those stations weekly, puts in new bags, and that's prevented a ton of pet waste from ending up in Oak Creek. We also work on closing down social trails, and so that keeps, obviously the stream health great, and we also work, it kind of prevents erosion. We partnered to do cleanups along the creek, and we've also been working with the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, looking at, creek health at various levels of the creek. So like the northern watershed, the southern part of the watershed, to see, what businesses or recreational areas are contributing to any resource damage.
That's awesome. And for people who maybe they're not in Arizona or Sedona, but maybe they're in Boston or New York City or Denver, Colorado, or somewhere else, how can people start to think about ways to give back to the places that they photograph, and what are some actionable first steps that they can take?
So I always recommend people, if you photographing or visiting an area a lot, or you go somewhere a lot, most national forests have a corresponding Friends of organization that works with that forest. So here it's Friends of the Forest Sedona, which I've been volunteering with for a few years. And once you're a volunteer, you can do trail work days. You can be a docent at, we have docent opportunities at some of our heritage sites. Trail patrol is a big thing. Trail ambassador, we're out there and you're actually interacting with visitors, and like you're counting how many off-leash dogs you see, or how many mountain bikers you see, or how you're picking up trash. We have a graffiti removal team. We have a ton of team trailhead beautification. And so the Friends of organizations, I think, are the best on the ground ways to get involved in like forest areas. And then also just Googling. I mean, if someone literally Googles like how to help Oak Creek, I'm hoping Oak Creek Watershed Council pops up. And it's like, if you recreate at Oak Creek, for instance, like we're a great organization because all of that money goes directly into protecting the creek. Similarly, you know, I know like Friends of Inyo. I love hiking in Inyo National Forest. I think that's a great organization. I love the Cascade Mountains. They have an association, Washington Trails Association. And I really try to figure out what organizations are specifically the ones partnering with their local forests, because at the end of the day, the national forests, I think, are some of the most utilized land in our country that are the most underfunded, understaffed, but also the ones that need the most volunteer help. Like most trail building ends up being helped by volunteers because there's just not enough staff to complete it.
That's right. All right. Well, I have one more question for you. Who do you recommend for the podcast and why?
So I strongly recommend Teal, and she goes by Western Watering Girl on Instagram and TikTok. And Teal and I became friends a few years ago on TikTok, actually. We were both kind of posting the same sort of, like environmental, outdoor advocacy kind of stuff. But she really focuses on the health of the Colorado River Basin, kind of these Western Basin states, the Colorado River watershed. And I think she has a ton of institutional knowledge. She's from the San Juan area. She's been living in Southwest Colorado her whole life. I think she's worked as a river guide. So she's someone that, walks the walk, talks the talk, and she has a ton of knowledge and information that is really crucial, I think, especially for those of us living out west with respect to kind of the health of our mountains, our water, and kind of where we're going to be getting water and what we see. She analyzes snowpack. It's from an environmental kind of science perspective, I think she's one of the best out there.
Awesome. Well, she's Ashley Goes Hiking, and you've heard it from here. She's done some amazing work to help give influencers a better name.
Tried.
Awesome, Ashley. Well, thanks again. I had a really great time, and I just can't thank you enough for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks for joining me for another great episode. A huge thank you to Ashley Petfish for sharing her thoughtful perspective on conservation, social media, and how photographers can become more responsible stewards of public lands. If you're feeling inspired to take your photography further, not just in the field, but in how you present your work, I'd love for you to check out my printing course, now available on Patreon. It's a complete video collection that walks you through the process of preparing your images for print, choosing papers, working with labs, and everything in between. Whether you're new to printing or just want to refine your process, it's a valuable resource to take your work to the next level. You'll find the link in the show notes or by visiting patreon.com/fstopandlisten. Thanks for stopping in, collaborating with us, and listening. See you next week.